Certainly, it's not the kind of joy and gladness that we're used to in other years. Things sit heavily on us because of the war, the fighting. And I can only sort of reflect briefly duplicity of the world. There was this terrible bombing in Moscow by ISIS. It is payback to Putin, apparently, for having tried to take out ISIS in Syria and working with the United States. So ISIS really got something set up for the United States also, if they got this, if they got in through Moscow, through Putin's Moscow. My Hutin, I don't want to say names because I don't want anybody to be traced, was in this week in the United States trying to transfer things out of Moscow. And he says life in Moscow is very difficult. I mean, it's very bad. They're managing along. Putin won himself election because nobody else was allowed to run except people that he wanted. And we don't know how many people actually voted. A lot of people voted nothing or set fire to the voting booths in protest. That's what I understand. So anyway, I know what Putin will do after this. It's what happened when there was the terrible bombing of, I don't remember, it was 20 years ago. It was a terrible bombing of a building. Many people were killed. So he went in and bombed Chechnya completely. I think it was Chechnya or Dagestan. Completely wiped out, completely. Nobody said anything. Now, this week, Putin, the Russians and the Chinese together vetoed the proposal of the UN going for a ceasefire because it would require the Hamas to send back the hostages, and they vetoed it because it should be an absolute ceasefire. But what they did is okay. When they did in killing Muslims is okay. So when Jews kill Muslims, oh, then it's not. I mean, that's the world hypocrisy. Oh, so now let me get to my point of view. Oh, yeah. So let me find what I've got here. Put this up on the screen for us. Where I am, move this out of my way, this in my way. Okay, so some thought. You know this quote about three kinds of lies, damned lies, and statistics. It's attributed to Mark Twain. Apparently, he admitted he was not good at numbers, but besides Marcelo and Jeff and right, nobody else in the world is good at numbers. How do I know that? Here's my example. In the current war against Hamas, there's understandably an outcry because you see widespread destruction. It's very bad. That's what it sounds like. It looks like. So I do fact checking. I said, okay, let me ask Google how much of Gaza has been blown up, and it's been said all over the place, repeated again and again and again. This is from December. Al Jazeera. Israeli bombardment destroyed over 70% of Gaza. This number 70% is repeated ever since the beginning of the war. Nothing changed since the beginning of the war. It was 70%. Today it's 70%. Something's wrong with the math. Wall Street Journal, which I trust more than Al Jazeera, repeated the exact same statement. 70% of Gaza's 439,000 homes. That's in December. Half its buildings. Okay, homes and buildings. All right. Well, 70% of the housing, 50% of all buildings. It's the same statistic constantly. Well, Al Jazeera, as I said, is the cheering squad for Hamas. It's owned lock, stock, and barrel by Qatar, which is Hamas's bankroller. But it must be right because the Wall Street Journal said so. And it tends to be a little bit to the right center. So now I have another one, though. BBC. Satellite data analysis by BBC. True extent of destruction, 144,000, 175,000 buildings damaged or destroyed. That's 50 to 61% of Gaza's buildings. So, okay, another report, half of Gaza's buildings damaged or destroyed. So it's about the same time frame, 50% to 61%. BBC, it must be right. BBC, British Broadcasting, official. Wait, now I go to Reuters. Reuters is also a reliable British source. Same time period. A fifth of Gaza's buildings destroyed. Wait, there's a difference between a half or 70% and 1/5. 400,000 buildings, 18% of all pre-conflict structures damaged or destroyed. Wait a minute. 18% is not half, it's not 70%. Reuters is a reliable news agency, but it's all in the same time period. Now, by February, we would assume that nothing is left standing, but now I go to the UN. And again, the Reuters reporting this, 30% destroyed. Okay, 18% to 30%. That's a plausible range. February. So in December, it was 50%, maybe 70% in December. Now in February, satellite imagery by the United Nations Satellite Center, 30% destroyed. The number, in other words, all of a sudden, all these buildings appeared again. Reappeared? Magic. 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 No cement goes through, no metal goes through, and suddenly half the buildings are back. Wonderful. Right? U.S. News and World Report, also the same thing. Satellite imagery by the United Nations, 30% of the buildings. Global News, 30%. Right? All these. So not 70, not 50. Reuters says maybe as low as 18%, highest 30. That's a month after they say 70%. 2 months after they say 70%. Now, all this is being tracked by simple satellite imagery. You can read the satellite pictures. Anybody can get hold of them. They're open access, I mean, government access. But the news media have them. They can see the actual imagery. So we should all be able to get to a consensus on buildings. Civilian casualties is harder because you don't know who's under the rubble. But buildings you can count. And if I can't get a correct count on buildings that I can see from publicly accessible satellite imagery, how can I know how many civilians there are? So let's go to the numbers and think about statistics. So let's say 70% of the buildings were destroyed. And let's say that's half the people inside the building were killed with them, right? Half get out, half get killed. That would be 35% of, right? 35%, half of 70, 35%, 35% of 2 million, 700,000 people should be dead. Now, the accusation is that Israel's killed 30,000. It's 32,000 now. It goes up, by the way, in a very statistically even number. Whether there's fighting or not, the numbers go up. Not 700,000. Well, if there was an attempted genocide, the Israelis are enormously incompetent because the Einsatz group in Ukraine wiped out 1.5 million Jews in the space of a few months with simple machine guns, much less destruction. They didn't have to blow up any buildings in the Ukraine to do it. They just round up people and machine gun them. In Rwanda, between the Houthis and the Tutsis, I don't know, what is 1 million, were killed by simple machetes. Very quick, in a short period of time. In Cambodia, simple machetes, knives, in a short period of time. The Israelis are incompetent. Can't carry out a genocide. You don't know how to do it. Ask Putin how to do it. He'll tell you how to blow up Chechnya. So I show us how perceptions are distorted. So now, in our current conflict, a lot of Israeli leaders have used the biblical account of Amalek as a quote to take out Hamas. It's the same kind of thing. Amalek in the story, in the biblical story, comes and attacks us when we were weak and unprepared. And that's what Hamas did on October 7th. So, of course, then this reference to Amalek is now used as, you see, Jews want to carry out genocide against the Palestinians because Amalek, in the story, we're told to wipe out Amalek. Is that really the analogy? Is that really the analogy? So who is Amalek? Right. So Shabbat, we have this reference, right, where we read today. Remember what Amalek did to you? And do not forget, blot out the memory of Amalek. And then after all that I read, spare no one. Oh, attack Amalek. And God says, kill all alike, when women, infants, suckling, oxen. Ooh, that's genocide. Certainly sounds like genocide. So Saul doesn't carry it out completely, takes the best of the spoils, right? He takes the spoils, he spares the king, right? But it is resolved. When is it resolved? It's resolved in the story of Purim, because the Purim story is written out in such a way, whether it was originally that way, certainly the final edition is done, edited in such a way to make it a resolution of the story of the war of Amalek. Resolved by Mordechai, son of Yair, son of Kish, a Benjaminite, Ish Yemeni. Right? He's a descendant of Saul. Kish being the father of Saul, descendant of King Saul. And who is it against? Haman ben Hamdatah ha'Agagi, Haman, son of Hamdatah, the Agagite. Agag, the king of Amalek, Mordechai, the descendant of Saul. You can see this is a carrying out of unfinished business. Now, but in the story of Purim now, who is really carrying out genocide? Who is plotting genocide? Unlike in the story of Samuel, where God says to it, it is who? Haman, who calls on the king, and the king signs it, to destroy, massacre, and exterminate all the Jews, young and old, children, women, on a single day, the 13th month of Adar, and to plunder their possessions, right? You get all the spoils of war. Very common. That's how armies were incentivized to, the Romans paid their soldiers by saying, whatever you kill and the land is there, that's yours. That's how they conquered everybody. Did it very efficiently, did it very effectively. We know that Mordechai and the Jews take up self-defense. And the king says to the Jews, I can't stop you. He says, I can't stop your enemies anymore. I'm only a king. I'm nothing else. I'm only Shah of all the Persian Empire from Hodu Kush, from Ethiopia to India. But I can't tell your enemies to stop. I'm not allowed to. But I give you permission to defend yourself. Big deal. You can defend yourself. I could have done it without the king's permission. You can defend yourself. Big deal. And if they attack them, you Jews may destroy and massacre and exterminate the armed forces all together with the women and children and plunder their possessions. Okay, fair. That's what they're planning to you. You do to them. It's fair. It's my empire. That's why I do justice in my empire. So do the Jews carry it out, though? So we have the Jews struck at their enemies with sword, slaying and destroying. They wreaked the will of their enemies. In Shushan, they killed a total of 500 men, 10 sons of Haman, but they did not lay hands on spoil. What happened in the story of Saul? Saul, the people take the splendor, the spoils of war, even though they're not allowed to. Here, they do not touch the spoils of war. It's not much of a massacre. 500 is not much of a genocide. Then again, the next day in Shushan, 300 men, they did not lay hands on the spoil. Again, they did not do it for profit. And they did not take a revenge in this case. It's defense. And then we get it very clearly stated in the next line, line 16. The Jews of the kingdom gathered together, stood up for their lives. The Hebrew is omed al nafsham. They stand up in self-defense, not revenge and not counterattack, not preemptive attack even, in defense. And then found respite from their enemies. They looked for a security against their enemies, rest from their enemies, not revenge. It's not in there. And did not take the spoils of war. Now, considering the size of the empire from India to Ethiopia, it's not much of a massacre. 75,000 men, sounds like that. In antiquity, it's a very small massacre. That's a drop in the bucket. They'll look at what the Romans did to the Carthaginians. They wiped out and they shredded the entire city of Carthage to the ground, so there would never ever again be a threat to them. And they did it to us in Jerusalem, twice 70, and then again 135 when they saw they didn't finish the job right. It's petty ante in the ancient world. But what's important, it does not say that they attacked the women and children, which is devised by him, and it was authorized, they were given permission to do it, and they didn't do it. And again, the numbers are twisted against us. This thing, the story of Purim, has been used against us many times in history, so how vengeful Jews are. So in the LA Times this week, and I should have known better, Jane Eisner was a former editor of Forward, should have known better, and she writes an op-ed, this was just Thursday, in the LA Times, and I sent a letter to the editor, I don't know if they'll print it, and she writes where the moral compunctions in the given modern, okay, it could have been a good editorial. Could have been. But she throws this line. As we relate to victimhood, we need to acknowledge and relate the revenge taken by the Jews. Where's the revenge? The word is not there. The act is not there. The 9th chapter book of Esther, often read quickly as if an afterthought, details a violent episode of state-sanctioned retaliation. Jews murdered 75,000 Persian enemies. Where does it say that they murdered them? Amod al nafsham. It's an act of self-defense. The whole thing is an act of self-defense because the king's decree to attack the Jews was never rescinded. And is made very explicit. And she uses the word women and children. There is no women and children in the story. They are told to kill the women and children, and they do not. It is, maybe they did, we don't know, but it's removed from the text intentionally because they want to make a point. We're not talking about revenge. We're not talking about the kind of October 7th willful massacring and destroying of human lives and their bodies. All right? No word of killing women and children, but the emphasis take no spoils. And she has the goal to say that it says what it doesn't say. She should know better. She should have asked a rabbi, is that what it says? Because she asked the rabbi about something else in her essay, and she did not. And what we have here is a Shylock moment. It is as if you're writing an essay and you take the Mendel Bayless accusation of blood libel for face value without asking, did it really happen? So Hamas is Hamas. It's killing women and children wantonly. It's taking the spoils. And Jews are like the Israelis today, of them, like they're defending for their lives, not intentionally killing women and children and taking no spoils of war. Yeah, they talk about making a beach out of Gaza Strip, but in the end, there's nothing to take. They're not going to take spoils of war. The spoils of war are sitting in Qatar. Their leaders have it. Their leaders have it. They stole it from their people. In Turkey. Yeah, the good banks are in Turkey. Right? So, although under Saul, the people took spoils of war, and the king authorized it, the new generation did not make war for plunder and gain. So, it is problematic, by the way, and I'm not going to go into great depth. The rabbis do ask this question: is terrible. You're carrying out an attack of men, women, and children. And a long, long discussion. And he says, we have a problem that whoever is merciful to the cruel, in the end will become cruel to the merciful. And he gives an example of, right, Saul is worried about the innocence of Amalek, and then as he's deposed as king, he kills men, women, and children later on, as he falls into the degenerates. So, what happens with kings? Yeah, it is a quote from, it's a use of the quote in Kohelet, Ecclesiastes, Al terasha habe, al tehei tzaddik habe, al terasha. Don't be over righteous, don't be a saint completely, and don't be evil. Lama tumu below itcha, why should you die before your time? I have a whole article about this, so I know it, and academic article. So anyway, the point is that when we are merciful in time of need, when we should not be merciful, in the end, we'll end up being cruel to those who are innocent. And so I know people are angry. They say, why did the United States bomb Dresden? Why did the United States firebomb Tokyo? But then we ask the ugly fact that had that not happened, they would have seen the final killing of every last Jew in Europe. You would have seen the continued enslavement and mass killing of China. That's what the Japanese were doing. Nobody remembers that. Nobody talks about it. Right? So when we step back from taking drastic steps, the alternate is worse. Prolonging the war is worse. A lot of academicians who study warfare point out when we are being too careful, in the end, the disaster is greater. So finally, those who claim the reference to Amalek is a cult of genocide, I want to show this picture. My father's yard site. So this is my father presiding at the dedication of the synagogue in Salzburg, Austria, Mozart Salzburg. There's a large DP camp nearby. Salzburg. Hallein. No, Austria. Yeah. And so you see here, Zechor Asher Salach Amalek. It's not easy to read. I'm going to try to bring here a little bit larger print. Zechor Asher Salach Amalek. It is this week's Torah reading. Then the translation, so a paraphrase, Jude, vergiss nicht das KZ. Jews, do not forget the concentration camps. In other words, don't forget. It's very clear. Every Jew knew. Don't forget Amalek. Who is Amalek? The Nazis and the Germans and the Austrians, in this sense, weren't they? Right? I mean, they put the Nazis in place. Yet. Right? There's no call for revenge upon the German people. There's no call for genocide. The sentiment may have been there. There's some people, some Jews who did try to carry out revenge, but in general, not. So my father afterwards decided he had enough of bloody Germany, and he left Europe, bloody Europe, too much. And his final words as he left, Ich verlasse dieses Land mit Verbitterung. I leave this land with bitterness. Nevertheless, for kind of folk, darf man die Fenster laden, zuschlagen. God does not shut the door upon any peoples, right? Future is in God's hands and not human hands. And so may not be long, the Jews in Germany become once again the bearers of a world civilization and with the German language of a lesson, Kant and Goethe, right? That's not a call for genocide. All right, that's Zechor Asher Amalek, but we want to transform. Can we transform Amalek? call against Amalek is not against innocent women and children. It is a warning for all humanity. The ability to unleash hatred upon any group of people is a sin against God, and what has happened against us, that is what's happened against us in our time and day. Yeah.
This week I want to mention, I read one of the Israeli newspapers, and they said as Jewish, we have to even treat our enemies like with dignity, because if we treat them with good deeds, eventually maybe they won't be our enemies in the future. One of the Israeli newspapers.
In other words, if you drop 100 bombs on Japanese, 300,000 Japanese implemented the 2 states. They gave up, they split us, and they're now great friends with the
They're the greatest. Yeah. It is very easy to do this Christian turn the other cheek. And Christians very often said, look, you Jews, you are, pound of flesh, Shylock, vengeful, eye for eye, tooth for tooth, not us. We are love. But then when push comes to shove and they go to war, they are eye for eye, tooth for tooth. Be realistic. Yeah. But that is the real world. So we have to defend ourselves in the real world. It means equivalency of value. Yes. All right. That's it. Okay. So that's my thought. Now, it's Purim. Purim. Mach Spaß. We have to make fun. Even, like Tevye says, even when our hearts are lying on the floor, we have to be joyful, right? And Fiddler. So, we lost a dear friend a few months ago in Michael Sherman, and he left us a very nice gift. They're finally straightening it out, so it'll help us get through the next few months. And I felt, it make us feel good. I have a few clips from him. Here he is, comedian impressionist Michael Sherman as George Burns. He's playing, not on the Ed Sullivan Show, he's playing at a theater.
I'm George Burns. And I'm 98 years old. If I'm still standing up, you're getting your money's worth. I'm thrilled to be here. Of course, at my age, I'm thrilled to be anywhere. I like a live audience. I'm so old. I just said, pay attention. How do you like me so far? How do you like me so far? That line was stolen from me by Jack Benny. That's right, paying attention. 98 years old. I'm so old, my social security card number is 3. I'm so old that they discontinued my blood type. I'm so old that whenever I go out to a restaurant for breakfast and I order a 3-minute egg, they make me pay in advance. One good thing about being 98 years old, very little peer pressure. The other night, in my dressing room, there was a woman pounding on my door all night long. But I finally had to let her out. I'm so old I remember when Baskin Robbins' surprise flavor of the week was vanilla. I remember when Heinz ketchups didn't have any varieties. I remember when the Big Dipper was just a little drinking cup. I remember when the Grand Canyon was just a little hole in the ground. I remember when the Dead Sea was only sick. I remember when Grandma Moses was a virgin. I have a girlfriend, 27 years old. My doctor said to me, Mr. Burns, you're 98 years old, your girlfriend's only 27. My doctor said to me, Mr. Burns, it could be fatal. I said, if she dies, she dies. For the past 6 months, we've been sleeping together. And just once, I would like to wake up. We have this on-again, off-again relationship. I pay someone to put me on again and take me off again. We have sex almost every day of the week. Almost Monday, almost Tuesday, almost Wednesday.
He goes on. I'm going to go, because we got another one where, and I'd like to get that one on. One more with him as Al Jolson.
That woman made, so if it's raining and the weed rats, or you say, it is raining, raining now. What's it raining? Raining violets. And when you see clouds upon the hills, you soon will see crowds of daffodils. So keep on looking for a bluebird and listening for a song. Whenever April showers come along. No daffodils. So keep on looking for a bluebird and listening for his song. Whenever those, not January, not February, not March, but April showers come along.
You know what? I never know. I never realized that you could actually sing also. I mean, there was a good imitation of Al Jolson and Jerry Lewis in there in the stylistics, but this voice was pretty good. Okay, so little thoughts for huh? Yeah, I should have some of the people we should have. Yeah, we'll have them up there, right? I'm going to add some materials on it. Yeah, we have a lot of things. I'll put some materials. I will have a lot of things on it. I'd lead your family. You've got a family story. Give me some things to show we can put it together. Yes, yes. Let's now just wrap up in the spirit of Purim and with this Purim Chagiga. Kinderlach.
back then because of a foolish man. Come on and excel and we will celebrate. Purim Chagiga, Adelo Yehuda. Purim Chagiga, ein, zwei, drei, vier. Purim Chagiga, Adelo Yehuda. Purim Chagiga, ein, zwei, drei, vier. Purim Chagiga, Purim Chagiga, Chaya Chagiga, Adelo Yehuda. Purim Chagiga, Purim Chagiga.
Chagiga. And so it's right here. Okay, we don't need to apologize to anybody for surviving as Jews. Don't have anybody an apology for celebrating that we've been around for 3,000 and some years. Those who have tried to destroy us are no longer here. I don't need to apologize for surviving. And I don't need to create a pity me impression to the readership of the LA Times about how I should be so sorry about what's happened to me. All right? No. We don't need it. We don't need it. We can celebrate that we have made it this far. We hope and pray that the leaders of Israel, between the military and the political echelons, do know what they're doing. We do hope and pray that the leaders of the United States, in coordination with Israel, do know what they're doing. It's not always true. We recognize that. But we hope ultimately that Israel will be spared. And maybe ultimately the Palestinian Arabs will also be spared of their desire to destroy and eliminate, as in the words of Haman, Mashim Bataf, men, women, and children, because that is part of the delusion that keeps them going. And you read the records and you read the reports, they'll be spared of that, and then we can be spared of them, and we can have, maybe create a real world in the Middle East. Well, to all of you, Shabbat Shalom to everybody. Because it's funny.
That's why it's so ridiculously looked at. They don't know that. We can't have to defend ourselves.
Yeah. Don't be good. Don't be so righteous, because in the end, you're going to enhance and increase cruelty. That's the intent of the rabbinic discussion. Yeah. See, we beat ourselves on the chest for the concentration camps. It's true. It's wrong. We're all Japanese.
No, but the clock is good. The clock is good. Change the button. No, the battery is tuning into the right time. Yeah, it's the right time. Okay. So.